Alright, today I'll show you how to make this shader dissolve effect that you can see here. But if you're looking for this exact effect, I have not seen anyone else, any other tutorial on it, which is why I thought I'd make a tutorial out of it and share it with people. You have a lot of control over this, so you can control the noise that controls like the disappearance. You can also go in and I'll do it off screen, but you can control the curve here and the colors of everything. If I want it to be like green all of a sudden, like a green fire and stuff like that, you can do that very easily. I also let me show you an example. This is a kind of a game where you go around and you have a menu here that's a book. And when I flip the pages, I'm dissolving the UI and then flipping to the second page. And then, by the way, if you guys are interested, I'll also make a tutorial about like this revealing minimap effect. So if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments below and I'll make a tutorial about that as well. There are still a few limitations. Let me go over them. The first of all is the UI cannot be inside a canvas layer, and that's because I haven't figured out how to make it work yet. It will not work if one of the children has a special visibility ordering. So if you have a UI that needs to appear above others, make sure that its ordering is at the bottom. And if you're spawning in UI elements, you can move that UI manually down the tree. The UI must be non-pitch black, so that's a point here for the outline. If you want the outline effect to be picked up, the UI itself needs to be not perfect black color, so it needs to be just a bit above. It can be still like to the eye, it can still be pitch black, but you need to add like a little bit of brightness to it, like one value. It can be transparent, by the way. It just can't be pitch black. Also, it can't be like fully transparent, because that would be the same basically. And then if you want other UIs that are in the same like environment as this one, and you want them to not be dissolved by the outline, if you want them to not be affected, they have to be in a visibility layer that the viewport can ignore. And I'll show you exactly how that works later. So let's get to it. Let's make this from scratch. So I have this blank project here. By the way, I will link an example project at the description, so don't worry about that. But yeah, let's get to it. So let's make a new user interface environment and say I want to just create like a simple UI example. So let me put a panel. In order for the visibility dissolve to work, you need something that has a texture as the parent. So either a texture rect or a texture rect or a texture container or a panel container. But it needs to be something that has a texture to it, so we can actually apply the dissolve alpha texture in the first place. So I'm gonna choose a panel container, right? And let me put it in like the middle here. And I'm gonna just populate it with a few buttons. So let me put an HBox container, and let me put a VBox container in here. Let's just put some buttons in there. So I'll put the VBox inside the HBox just so we can like diversify a bit of the geometry. So you can see this really works with everything. So yeah, this is like any UI that you already have. And the point is, you can just add it to existing UIs very easily. Now the point here is that this panel container, we can give it a texture override in here. If we choose panel and we give it a new style box texture, now we have a texture we can fit in here, and it can be anything. It can be this icon, or it can be, and we'll get to that, a viewport texture. And that's where the magic can kind of happen, because here we cannot accept a material directly onto this texture for what we need. In here we need to go into visibility, and now let's choose clip only. When you use clip only, it's gonna only show, it's gonna not show the panel container, but it is also gonna allow you to control the modulation from the panel container itself. I mean, I can control like everything here. Now we need to go ahead and add our viewports. So let's make a sub viewport container. So and then sub viewport. Let's we set the container to stretch. That's important. And then we also need to go in visibility and set the layers to none, because I actually don't want to see the sub viewports. I just want to have the container kind of stretch everything automatically as the screen sizes change. Also important, you set the anchor preset to full rect. Now let's go into this sub viewport. This will have our alpha texture that will generate with the material. So alpha texture viewport. Now we need to first set it to have a transparent background. Now what we need to do is add a child node, and we need to add a texture rect to that viewport. Now this texture rect will be our alpha texture, and it will control the alpha of our panel container. And then in this alpha texture, let's set the anchors to expand or to full rect. So now what we need to do is go in the texture here and make a new canvas texture out of it. So now what we need to do is we need to add the material to the texture, the dissolve material. So let's make a new shader material, and let's make a new shader and call it dissolve. So this dissolve shader will control our actual alpha channel, dissolving everything on the opacity side. Now let's go into the shader editor. Let's add a sampler 2D and make it our screen texture. And I'm making it a hint screen texture, so it actually knows to use the screen texture instead of just any texture. And we also need our noise texture. Hint repeat, and we want to enable repeat so we can sample values greater than 1 and still work. And we also want a value for the top. We don't want the float value to the top threshold, and we want a uniform value for the bottom threshold. Now the way this will work is that the bottom threshold just tells you how harsh the edge is going to be, but the larger it is, the smoother the transitions. So yeah, let's go into our ment here. I deleted it by accident. So if we go in here and I choose new noise texture, then I go and I choose I make it seamless, and I create a new fast noise. That will be it. That's the setup you need. So we need a custom UV. So vec2 screen UV equals screen UV like this. Now you may run into issues where this still scales the noise up and stuff, at which point you might want to add the following code, but I'm just going to comment it out. Vec2, and what does it do now? And that's what the screen texture is for. Like this. And this would basically, if you have issues with it still stretching and squishing the noise, if you change the window size, you just get rid of this part and see if that works for you. That might do the trick. Float. Now we need to sample the noise. Like this. And then we need another flow scale equals top threshold times 1 plus bottom like this. And then we can actually apply our result into the color output. So let's make a new vector 4. And now we're going to use the smooth step function. We smoothly transition between the bottom threshold and the top threshold. So let's make a smooth step here. And then we're going to do top, or scaled threshold, and then minus bottom threshold, scaled threshold for the top upper value of the smooth step, and then finally our noise result. And what it's gonna do, it's gonna take the noise result and it's gonna fit it, or it's gonna see where it lands within this range, and then it's gonna scale what the value in that range lands in between 0 and 1. And then the effect that you get from this, if I can actually get it to show, is if I change this value here, you can see that I can make it very, very tight, or I can get the value high and get it very foggy like this. And that's it. We now only have to go into our panel container here and set the texture to be the viewport texture. Oh, it doesn't let us because we need a local to scene resource. Viewport texture of the alpha texture view, and look at that. There is the effect, full effect in here, and we can control the dissolve effect of it pretty nicely. You can have it very sharp like this. You can have it very foggy like this. But this is without outline. Now we need to add a new viewport. So sub viewport, and let's call this shared world 2D viewport. So we need to do a few things in here still. We need to set it to transparent, and we need to have a layer designated for calling, so that we can have UIs that don't actually listen or are not affected by the outline at all. So if you want to have a UI that is not affected by the outline, put it inside this layer for the calling. We need to add a script to this viewport, because you cannot make the world, the 2D world of this viewport be the same as this one without a script. So for that, we'll need to go into, we'll need to make a new script for it, and in here, func ready. So when we're ready, we set the world 2D equals get parent get world 2D, like this. And that's it. So that's all the setup when it comes to this viewport, right? Now we need to add the actual outline texture. So that texture we're adding, we need to add a texture rect, sorry. And we can put it at the bottom here, or if you're more comfortable, put it at the top, and then set the ordering to be higher than whatever we want it to appear above. And then it's important that we set the visibility layer to 2 here, so that it is not rendered back at the viewport, world 2D viewport, as that would cause errors, and it would actually look bad as well. We also make sure that this texture is expanded across, the entire screen. And then we also need to set it to have ignore size in the expand mode. We need to go ahead and set our texture of the rect to be of that shared world 2D texture. And if we play now, yeah, you should see now that it's kind of pitch black, and that's because this texture is seeing the UI and it's seeing the panel behind it. After we've done that and we've seen that everything works, so there's no errors, we can actually go ahead and implement a material that would have or would add the outline shader. So let's make a new material and let's call it dissolve outline. And in here we're gonna use just the fragment as well, like this. First, let's add a few variables. So we want to have like a nice gradient that will appear along the transition of opacity here. We did a uniform sampler 2D, and that's going to be our gradient texture. So let's just call it gradient like this. And then we also want a const float epsilon, which will represent a very small number like this. So we're going to use this epsilon to check if there is actually a UI there to render. And if we go in here, let's set up a gradient texture. So we can use the gradient 1D, and in this case the right side will be the fully transparent side, and we can give it like a bit of transparency, and then the right side we can, oh, I'm pretty bad at this, we can give it like a neon green kind of outline just for the testing sake. And yeah, let's write some code here. So first we want to sample our texture. So we're going to sample this texture we're getting. We're going to sample the viewport texture of the entire UI. We're going to do it like this because we have the texture set up in the inherit texture. We can just use this parameter right away. So if something is not fully opaque and not fully black, that means we are perfectly on we're both on a UI element, and we're transitioning into that. We're basically fading out as well. We're going to use a float, and it's going to be texture outline coefficient. We're going to make it equal 1 minus, and then we're going to use a bunch of steps here. Step. This is basically an OR statement, but just with like step functions. And then we're also going to be multiplying it by 1 minus the sample alpha. So we can actually use this for the gradient, for example. We know exactly which part of the transition we're in. Color equals texture. We're going to sample our gradient. And we're going to give it a vector 2. We're going to make our own UV here, basically, that takes the texture outline coefficient and 0 in the Y, because we don't care about it's just a 1D gradient here. Vector 4, we're going to make another vector 3 inside it, and we're going to make it a 1. So we're going to make it step, and yeah, epsilon with our texture outline coefficient. And basically, if the outline is bigger than 0, then we're going to actually allow the outline to show. If it is not, it's going to return 0, and the color will be fully transparent. And this is the final shader and how it looks. Let's test and see that it works. I'm not sure if it's going to work. Yeah, I've done something wrong. Let's see. Alright, I figured it out. The epsilon was too small of a threshold for the step of the texture outline coefficient. If you want the curve to not show, just use a transparent color like this. And that way, when you play, you see it's not dark anymore. So that's basically it. Now if you wanted to animate it, for example, let's add a new animation player to this so you can see it in action. Let's add a new animation like this, and say we want to animate the dissolve effect. What we can do is just go in here, press the key on our thing here, create. We can then get rid of this one, go back in here, set this to 0. So now we have 0 in the threshold, and we have a timeline for it. We can press right click and insert key. Then we can press in here to the end of the time, set this to 1. right click, insert key, and now we have this transition. Let's set it to be back and forth and actually extend it to be 1.5. Let's add a control here, and then just like so. Set this to this, and there you have it, fully working effect right here. And you see when I squeeze it in like this, the noise gets squeezed in. So we can go in the shader editor and get rid of this comment, and when we restart we get an error. One sec. Yep. So you see the actual noise pattern does not get compressed now. Anyways guys, I hope this tutorial was bearable to watch at least. It's like my first serious tutorial, and leave a like if you liked it, subscribe for more stuff, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me making a tutorial about that minimap reveal. And if you have any issues as well, I'll take a look and help you in the comments below. That's it from me now, and thank you for watching.